I gotta tell you, recovering from being a caregiver has been different than grief. My father died 6 months before my mother, and I went through a lot of grief counseling. I was not his caregiver, so I knew what grief was. But recovering as a caregiver, way different. With my father, I didn't freak out every time the phone rang after he died. With my mother, because I'd been on call for 10 years. On call for 10 years. When I say on call, I mean, I was either going into an emergency, coming out of an emergency, in the middle of an emergency, or recovering from an emergency for 10 years, right? And so when the phone rang, that wasn't the phone, that was the mom hotline, right? And so when the phone rang after she passed, I still had like anxiety, right? When there was a text, I had anxiety. When it was noon, I had anxiety because that's when she woke up, and that's when the caregivers came in, and that's, I was waiting for the call to find out was something wrong with mom, when, at 5 o'clock, because that's when shift change was if I wasn't there. At 2 o'clock in the morning, I would wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning because that's when I always used to check the cameras. There was I still count in sevens because I've sorted her damn meds so many times for 10 years. There's so many things about that caregiver recovery, and just even like that energy that's in your body when you're in a constant state of fight or flight. Like, there is massive energy that is pumping through your body, and being able to just calm down. It feels uncomfortable to sit. When I was a caregiver and I was working and I was on call and I was taking calls from doctors and I was taking calls from caregivers and I was taking calls from mom and I was planning and I was plotting and I was doing all of these things, a million things a minute, it's like sitting down to eat a meal. You were never just sitting down to eat a meal. You were like project managing while you were doing that, and you were trying to do it fast. And if you had time to eat a meal, right? And so even just sitting down to eat a meal after being a caregiver for that long and not having to project manage was such a trip. It was such a trip, and it was fucking uncomfortable. I'm sorry. It was really uncomfortable to even just sit down and eat a meal, to sit down and be quiet, to sleep, and anything was uncomfortable. Caregiver recovery was very, very different from grief and involved a lot of PTSD.